the Georgia Bulldogs have the easiest path to the college football playoff this year. Maybe that's a little obvious to say because we're 10 games into this thing, but their path is clearer than it was last year. That's the argument I'm making today, and people thought they were better last year, right? They have the generational defense and everything. They were ranked number one for a long time. Well, the same sentiment this year. They've been ranked number one for the majority of the season. I believe it's the best team in the country, top to bottom. And they have the best coaching staff, and I think it's currently the best program in the country. That can change, but that's the trajectory that they're on. They have the clearest path to be one of the Final Four teams there in the 4-team playoff. Ohio State and Michigan, I would say, are right behind them as far as how easy it'll be for them to get there, what has to happen for them to get there. And I'm going to get into the details. It's not as clear for Tennessee. It's not, for TCU, maybe it is a little clearer for TCU than maybe I thought before I started making this video and thinking about it. Because if they went out, I believe they would slip in. USC, you need a little bit of help probably. LSU, it's not impossible. Regardless, all those teams are in the mix to get in. Maybe Clemson and North Carolina. I doubt it. But all those teams are in the mix to get in. But what I'm saying is Georgia, it's going to be simplest for them because they have a margin of error now that a lot of these other teams don't. And I'd argue that maybe all outside of Ohio State and Michigan have a margin for error. I don't think those other teams do. Georgia does, and that's one game. And it doesn't matter which one it is out of the next three. Now, I believe Georgia will be 13-0 and the number one seed heading into the playoff as it stands right now, meaning that they would beat Kentucky, Georgia Tech, and LSU in the SEC championship. But they can lose one of those games and they'll still be in, and they won't drop to the 4 seed. I would be surprised. They'd be the 2 or the 3. Ryan Kelee from Dog Post here, talking about the playoff picture a little bit. Make sure you're checking out Dogstruction, links down below. This Sunday at the Red Zone's the Kelee event. There's still some tickets on sale to that. If you want to meet Kelee, take a picture with him, get a couple things signed, get a copy of Dogstruction. It's a great deal. All the links are down below. For Georgia, Kentucky, Dean and I met in our Final Feelings video really that we did. We didn't really talk that much about Kentucky, and that's mostly because we just don't think that Georgia's going to have a huge issue with them. The weather's going to play a factor. It's going to be really cold. Last week in Starkville, it was very cold. It's going to be colder this time. I've got my puffer jacket ready. I've got my electric hand warmer coming in the mail today, hopefully. That would suck if it didn't. And it's tough. It'll be the passing game won't be as easy. I kind of think that Georgia will keep it on the ground. I don't want to talk too much about the Kentucky game. Georgia should obliterate Georgia Tech. The program's not in a good spot. Hasn't been for a while. And then LSU, I have a difficult time seeing LSU beat the Dogs in Atlanta. Should be a bigger Georgia crowd than it is an LSU crowd. I think that LSU is a good team, but I don't think they're good enough to beat. Any team can be any team, but I don't think this LSU team. I have a hard time seeing Jaden Daniels have this crazy game, and that's what he'd have to beat this Georgia defense. Georgia has played in that stadium this year already, and they obliterated Oregon, who I don't think is much worse than LSU. I think they're kind of similar, actually. So we know what the drill is there. Anything can happen, but I think Georgia would beat LSU. So it's really about these other teams, honestly. This video is also about these other teams. USC. I think USC has a shot, right? Ranked 6, 7 right now. So what you have? Oh my goodness! I pulled up the basketball schedule. You got to be kidding me. Okay. You've got at UCLA. You got to win that game, and then home against Notre Dame. So these are 2 top 20 teams in the college football playoff rankings. You got to win these 2 games, and then you'd have to beat who's probably going to be Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. I mean, if UCLA wins out, I think, or USC wins out, I believe that they'll be probably that 4th team. However, why is that path unclear? Because I still think Michigan, Ohio State, Tennessee, TCU will all have arguments to get in. And if LSU beating Georgia is one of the last things that USC wants. So there are a lot of ifs. Okay? So Georgia doesn't have that many ifs. It's just win 2 of the next 3 and you're in. So USC could really use a lot of help from LSU beating Georgia, from Tennessee dropping one of these games, from the Michigan-Ohio State game being a blowout, TCU dropping a game, the ACC eating itself alive. USC needs help probably. All right? I think it's a little unlikely that if everybody just wins out and USC wins out that they would get in. I have a hard time seeing that. Tennessee's strength of record is going to be better when the time comes, and the committee's been inconsistent on 4 best versus 4 most deserving, so I don't know who they'd pick in that scenario. Now, Ohio State and Michigan, what you've got there is, okay, well, they might both get in, depending on what happens with Tennessee and USC, TCU. They could both slip in. I mean, we have a situation where it could be a 1 Georgia versus a 4, the loser of the Michigan-Ohio State game, and then a 2, winner of the Michigan-Ohio State game versus 3 Tennessee. That's a possible scenario. TCU went out, and you're probably in. But for Ohio State, Michigan, you'll have to win the Big Ten championship. Well, you might not. I would say Ohio State, Michigan currently have the one loss margin of error, but they both don't have that. The winner of that game is probably going to play Illinois in the Big Ten championship, and you're gonna really want to win that game. So for the loser of the Michigan-Ohio State game is in trouble because there's no guarantee. But for Georgia, it's pretty much written in the stars that you lose one game, well, you're probably in. It's just not as guaranteed with these teams because if Ohio State loses and everyone else wins out, well, they might get dropped out in the same cases for Michigan. I don't know. The committee's a little unpredictable. Georgia's path is the clearest. USC, LSU, Tennessee, North Carolina, Clemson game, those are all things you got to keep an eye on because they're all affecting each other. TCU, you just got to win out. You control your destiny, TCU. Georgia controls its destiny and some in a way that the other teams don't, and their path is, I believe, clearer than it was last year. And Alabama in the SEC Championship last year, I'd argue, is better than this year's LSU team. Links down below, Dog. Struction, Kelee, Ringo event, all of that down below. See you there.